totally look like an idiot. That presentation went so badly. Maybe I'm just not cut out for these types of things. Man, every time my friends ask me to hang out, I just turn them down. Maybe I should have done my work later and hung out with them instead. Maybe if I didn't say that, he wouldn't be angry at me. It's just like that other time in high school. Or that time in freshman year when it's normal to feel regret, and it's normal to think about the mistakes we've made in the past. But thinking about them without an objective, just wandering aimlessly in our negative thoughts, can be problematic. Developing a prolonged habit of ruminating over our mistakes or about the past can lead to problems such as chronic stress, muscle tension. It can cause low energy. It can lead to psychosomatic symptoms such as body aches, fatigue, or low energy. Ruminating over our thoughts before going to bed can also contribute to insomnia. The list goes on, but we'll end off on how ruminating over the past can sap our energy and waste our time. Maybe we could have been more productive on that day. Maybe we could have slept a few more hours had we not wasted that time thinking about the past. Maybe we could have finished some homework, or gone to the gym, or cleaned up the house. Sometimes we think about the past in order to try to learn from it. So what we really have to do is distinguish between whether our rumination is healthy and adaptive, or if it's harming us. Healthy rumination allows us to look back and reflect over the mistakes we've made so that we can learn from that, so that we can gain some insight. Maybe during that argument we had yesterday, the claims against us were actually valid. And maybe an apology is due. Or maybe we realize that we have a habit of binge watching or scrolling through social media right before we go to bed, and this is affecting our sleep schedule. Maybe thinking about that can help us realize that maybe it wasn't such a good idea to do that. In situations like these, ruminating, or rather just thinking about these things, can allow us to apply some knowledge to correct these mistakes. A lot of times, however, even though we try to justify our rumination, it's actually not providing us any benefit, and it's actually making us feel worse about ourselves. If it continues for long enough, it can hurt our self-esteem and train us to think negatively. So what are some of the ways that we can reduce our rumination? Tip number 1 is compassion. To show ourselves love and to forgive ourselves for what happened in the past, to accept it. If we feel regret about the past, we should remind ourselves that either one of two things could have happened, potentially more, but for simplification, A, we acted the best way that we could, and the fact that things didn't work out isn't necessarily our fault. Or B, we didn't act in the best way we could have, and that's also okay, because it's human nature to make mistakes. It's human nature to get angry when provoked. It's human nature to miscalculate. It's easy to blame ourselves or others for things that didn't work out, but it can be quite liberating to think that a missed opportunity, for example, just wasn't meant to be, and that's okay. So instead of being hard on ourselves for things that didn't work out, we can invest that energy in moving forward. Maybe an apology will repair the damage after an argument. Maybe you need to apply to other jobs because that job interview just didn't go well. A great scholar once said that if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. So don't keep looking into the past when it has nothing to offer you anymore. Tip number 2 is to distract yourself. Especially if an incident just occurred and it's fresh on your mind, it may not be a good idea to ruminate over it. And in other instances, don't try to shut them down and not think about it. I know that sounds kind of weird, but hear me out. So if I were to tell you not to picture a white bear, did the image of a white bear pop into your mind or just flash through your mind? There's a psychological effect in which If you try not to think about something, you start to think about it even more. So a good way to stop thinking about something is to replace it with something else. Try to think about a funny joke a friend shared, or a positive memory, or an enjoyable moment at work, or something something interesting you learned about on the internet. Tip number 3 is to direct your energy to the present. If you're ruminating while doing activities throughout the day, then chances are that you might be missing out on valuable experiences. Maybe you'll forget your keys before leaving the house. Maybe you'll forget that you owed a favor. You'll miss out details from a presentation or just daily life experiences. So don't allow yourself to disassociate from what's happening around you. Your life can become a lot more wholesome and rich if you focused on the little details and learn to cherish them. Life is too short to spend in angst or disappointment. One way to appreciate the present is to practice mindfulness. And mindfulness is essentially paying attention to what is going on around you at the moment, and to notice the little things without having any judgment. See the description box for more resources on practicing mindfulness. And number 4 is to journal your thoughts. Journaling is a tool that helps to put our experiences, thoughts, and beliefs into language, which can help us to understand them and to grow and to make sense of what happened. The following was a quotation modified from Joshua Smith, who is a professor of biobehavioral health at Penn State, and he also co-authored a book called Opening Up by Writing It Down. So journaling in a metaphorical sense is like taking the load from above our head and our shoulders and translating that into ink, which we transcribe onto a paper so that the load is no longer weighing down on us. Cognitively, journaling gives us no choice but to organize our thoughts into some form of chronology with the events having relationships between one another, maybe a cause and effect, and to form some type of coherent, kind of cohesive narrative. This allows us to take a more rational perspective towards what happened, and it becomes harder to lie to ourselves about what really transpired. And by creating some distance between us and the events that happened, journaling can help us feel relief and to even give us a sense of control over the events that happened. So try to make it a goal to transition from more emotional writing to more cognitively oriented and focused writing. And so instead of focusing on how slighted and offended you felt when your friend didn't invite you to a hangout, you can try to focus on maybe what you value in a friendship. Write about possible explanations as to why you weren't invited, giving the other person the benefit of the doubt, or discuss what friendship means to you. Emotional writing might keep us trapped in that cycle of negative thinking and rumination, whereas cognitive writing will help us form logic and a rational conclusion. So tip number 5 is to dedicate a time to process your thoughts. So now, during the day, maybe dedicate half an hour or an hour. Maybe this can be during your commute to work, or maybe while you're on your way to school, and it would be that half hour or that hour only that you would be allowed to process your thoughts. The benefit of doing this is that it creates a time limit, and that time limit forces you to have an objective rather than aimlessly wandering throughout your thoughts. And another benefit is that you'd be able to move on from rumination, because you can tell yourself that, I already gave myself half an hour or an hour to process my thoughts. Now I've got to move on to something else. You can tell yourself that ruminating over your thoughts can wait until the next day. You'll just have to think about something else or do something else because you've already used up that time. So this exercise is kind of similar to something that Dr. Thomas Berkovich developed for worrying. So when people devote time to ruminating in a focused way, one of two things happens. They may find that they can't fill the half hour or that hour that they allotted to ruminate over their thoughts. Like they can't ruminate for that long, or they find some sort of resolution at the end of that period. This is quite different from typical rumination because normal rumination is kind of you thinking about your thoughts, doing an activity, going in and out on like a very superficial level into your thoughts, and you would do that throughout the day. Another benefit of this is that you won't end up ruminating right before you go to bed, and then it won't contribute to your insomnia, because I for one, for some reason I decide to ruminate over my entire day, or what I'm going to do the next day, or and I try to plan everything out while I'm going to bed, which is also pretty problematic because then you'll start to associate your bed with a safe haven to ruminate. So if you enjoyed today's video, leave a thumbs up and consider subscribing because I post weekly, and let me know what you'd like to see in future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.